Hello and welcome to my third video covering the 1986 Formula One Grand Prix season, covered in the Formula One FOCA yearbook 1987, Formula One Constructors Association. I say covering the season, I'm mainly simply covering this book. It's a very old book that I've had since, I think, Christmas 1986. And as I said in my last video, I had to patch it up recently because I noticed, oh look, it's come undone again. Look at that. Oh, I just noticed that. Okay, I did stick all of that to, I stuck it all back to the spine, but a few weeks ago. But maybe with a book this old, there's not a lot you can do. I shall try and re-stick it again. Anyway, I was up to I think round 8, the French Grand Prix. So I'm now going to flick across until I get to the French Grand Prix. Let's have a look. Canadian Grand Prix. Okay, lots of lovely pictures. Here we go, French Grand Prix. French Grand Prix. That's pretty much all I remember of this was that it was a fairly straightforward Grand Prix win for Nigel Mansell. I think we had just lost Elio De Angelis in a testing accident as well. But yeah, it was a fairly simple win by Nigel Mansell, with Alain Prost in second place, I think, from what I remember. Strange Brabhams back then. Strange shape, isn't it? The 1987 Brabham was actually pretty much the same shape as the 1988, the World Championship all-conquering 1988 McLaren. And that was down to, I think, Gordon Murray. I think Gordon Murray designed this 86 Brabham, and I think he designed the 87 Brabham, and then moved to McLaren, and it was virtually the same design he did, but a big difference in the results, because the Brabham in 86 and 87 barely scored a point, whereas the 88 McLaren won every single race apart from one, and they only lost that one because Ayrton Senna, the leader, was knocked out by a backmarker with a couple of laps to go at the Italian Grand Prix. What's going on there? Rene Arnoux. When I first started watching Formula One properly in the early 80s, every fortnight when the Grand Prix was on, the Radio Times, which was a magazine, a weekly magazine about TV, what was on TV, it would always choose which British driver it wanted to talk up for that particular Grand Prix. Sometimes it was Nigel Mansell, sometimes it was Derek Warwick, but it was actually Nigel Mansell that took off success-wise. and started winning Grand Prix from 1985. So after that, all the focus was on him. But Derek Warwick was a very good driver and had some very good results, especially in his Renault in the early 80s. But there you go. Anyway, Nigel Mansell won the race easily from Alain Prost. Nelson Piquet quite a bit further back. Keke Rosberg. Ayrton Senna was, as usual, on pole. Obviously very fast. His car wasn't up to it in race distances, but in the single lap of qualifying, he was very good. So now Prost led the championship by just 1 point ahead of Nigel Mansell, who was only 2 points ahead of Ayrton Senna. Nelson Piquet was quite a distance back. So here we are, the British Grand Prix. All hail Nigel Mansell on these British Grand Prix. He won the British Grand Prix in 86, this one, and 87, and 91, and 92, all in a Williams. And his first Grand Prix win came at a British circuit. The previous year, in 1985, he won the European Grand Prix, which was held at Brands Hatch. Anyway, this race was an interesting race and a terrifying race. So it had a terrifying start anyway. I have actually, I don't know if raced is the right word, but I have done a number of laps in a single-seater racing car around this circuit, around part of the circuit, a mini version of the circuit, some 20 years ago. It's great fun. I was only going at 100 miles an hour, but in a single-seater racing car, where you're virtually lying down inside the car, it feels like you're lying on the surface of the track. When you're going at 100 miles an hour in that position, it feels like 1,000 miles an hour, with the whole car shaking, and the gear stick was a little piece of metal, and the whole car was shaking so much that you couldn't focus on where the little metal gear stick was, and you couldn't see through the rear view mirrors properly because of the whole car shaking to bits as you're driving around at 100 miles an hour. An amazing experience though. But anyway, that was on this circuit, Brands Hatch. This is the most recent Grand Prix to have been held at Brands Hatch, this 1986 Grand Prix. This is the start. I don't know if that's the original start, but there was a disaster at the start, big accident. It finished Jacques Laffitte's Grand Prix career. He was in his 176th and record equaling Grand Prix, and big accident, and he broke his legs, and that was it. That was the end of his career, Jacques Laffite. Nigel Mansell, his car broke down at the start, completely separate to the incident. His car broke down. This is going around, I think that's Paddock Hill Bend. As I have been around there myself. It's quite fun. You go around there and it dips down. It's a fantastic corner. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, Nigel Mansell retired. His car retired, but because there was a big accident elsewhere at the start, everyone was allowed to start again. And so he was able to jump into the spare car, which was set up for his teammate Nelson Piquet. But he was at least able. So unfortunately, fortunately, but also unfortunately, he was able to benefit from the other big accident. I don't know why that arrows has grabbed all of that stuff and dragged it across the track. Well, it's a nice hot sunny day. I wasn't there. I didn't start going to Grand Prix until 1988. This is the Benetton, same Benetton team that Michael Schumacher raced in. Nowadays, the Benetton team is called Alpine. They've gone through lots of different name changes. They are known as the Enstone outfit because they're based in Enstone in England. So even though the owners change and the name changes, a lot of the staff stay the same. They started off as a team called Tolman in 1984, and they're still going today, but they are called Alpine this year. So that is Jacques Lafitte there. A beautiful McLaren again. So yeah, Nigel Mansell was able to hold off Nelson Piquet, even though he was driving Nelson Piquet's spare car. The team only had one spare car, and it's always set up for a different driver. I think they alternate back then. Nowadays you don't get spare cars, but they did back then. And so he took Piquet's spare car and managed to win the race, beating Piquet. It's a bit embarrassing for Piquet. Didn't beat him by much, but it doesn't matter. He beat him in Piquet's own car. So that then meant that Mansell was leading the championship. He had won 4 of the previous 5 races. And he was leading the championship by only 4 points, mind, which is not a big gap, but they only got 9 points for a win back then. Right, now starts the resurgence of Nelson Piquet, because as you can see here, Piquet only had 29 points. Mansell was teammate 47. But Piquet was about to win 3 of the next 4 Grand Prix, I think. And this is the first of them, the German Grand Prix. I was in one of these races, I can't remember if it was Germany or Hungary or Italy, one of these races that Piquet won, that he had active suspension on his Williams, and Mansell had decided not to have it. Piquet wanted the innovation, and it made his car a lot quicker than Mansell, and so from the next race Mansell took the active suspension. I think it's one of these races, possibly the Italian Grand Prix, I can't remember now. But it's weird how these things happen. You know, Mansell had won 4 of the previous 5 races, and now Piquet was to win 3 of the next 4, the 4th one being run not by Mansell but by Prost. Beautiful shot going over the curbs there. Very nice. Nelson Piquet carrying, is that Adam Prost? Yeah, I think it must be, mustn't it? Or is that Piquet? No, it's Prost. Yeah, so Piquet ran out of fuel. That's right, I remember now. Piquet ran out of, Mansell ran out of fuel. Oh dear, Alain Prost ran out of fuel just before the finishing line, and he tried to push the car over the line, but he could not quite get it across the line, and had to retire. How galling is that? I mean, he went on to win the championship, as we know, but how galling to run out of fuel just before the finishing line. So there we have it. a win for Senna, Piquet second, Mansell a distant third. So a bad race for Prost. He still was classified as in 6th place. Not sure why, because he didn't get it across the line. So anyway, so a bad race for Prost. His 3 main championship rivals all scored points. Oh, July the 27th. I know that date. Hungarian Grand Prix in Budapest. The first Hungarian Grand Prix. It's still going. It's been going ever since. It's never stopped. This was the first one. The first Hungarian Grand Prix. It's a very tight, twisty circuit, quite a slow circuit. It's never been very popular with the drivers. It's very difficult to overtake. Tight and twisty, as I say. But it's always been on the circuit because there's never been any financial problems. It's always been well backed by the Hungarian government. So there's never been any issue financially. And that's what's kept it on the circuit for so long. That's a beautiful shot. And yep, so I know that looks like it's Mansell winning, but it's not. Mansell finished 3rd. Stefan Johansson getting a bit carried away. So there you go, Nelson, Piquet. It was the same 3 basically again, Piquet, Senna, Mansell. And Prost was nowhere again. He had an accident with Arnoux on lap 23. His old Renault teammate from a few years beforehand. So again, a disaster for Prost. However, and I remember it well, the next race he came charging back with gusto. As the Australian Grand Prix, just as we thought, is Prost out of the championship now, because in that last race it left Mansell on 55 points, Senna on 48, Piquet 47 and Prost on 44. Only a few races beforehand, Prost had been leading the championship. But then came the Austrian Grand Prix, the most important race it ended up being for Prost in the season, because none of his 3 championship rivals finished the race. Or not in the points anyway. That's Theo Fabi, Gerhard Berger's teammate in the Benetton. I love the Austrian circuit. It's probably my favourite circuit. They race on it as well these days. They have done for the last sort of 6 or 7 years. It's such lovely scenery. The Styrian Hills, or Styrian Mountains in Austria. It's incredible. It's just so picturesque. It's beautiful. One of the most beautiful countries in the world, Austria, has to be said. So, yep, there you go. Prost won. 2 Ferraris were 2nd and 3rd, and where were the... so Mansell, his car failed on lap 32. Piquet, his car failed from overheating on lap 29, and Senna, his engine failed due to a misfire on lap 13. So Prost came bouncing back into the championship and ended up 2nd, only 2 points behind Mansell. It was a great comeback result. It left us in an amazing position with 4 races left. Mansell on 55, Prost 53, Senna 48, Piquet 47. And Rosberg in his final year, not really concentrating on what he's doing, down on 19 points in 5th place. That's where I shall end this video today. My last video will cover the last 4 races and the end of the championship. So, thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Oh, and if you feel the urge, please do subscribe. Very much so appreciated, that would be.